Hey, I'm Duke on Twitch. If you want to support the channel and greensunzenith.com, you can find my Patreon, merch store, and singles store where you can buy singles through TCG Player or Card Hoarder in the video description. If you want to get in contact, you can also find all that info in the description below for things like donation deck lists or just wanting to reach out. Alright, let's get right into it.
Hey, welcome back to Dukes on Twitch. Back today with another deck tech, this time for Green-White Maverick with Chris, aka Clips4Lyfe. Hey Chris, a huge thank you for joining me for a bit of a run through with Green-White Mav in 2023.
And thanks for having me, man. Super excited to be here. Super honored to be a guest on your channel. So thanks for having me, man.
Oh, the honor's all mine, especially for someone who, I think in 2023 it's pretty tough to not splash a color. So to not only be playing green-white, but also be putting up trophy results pretty consistently with the list is pretty sweet. What is kind of your background with Maverick? And have you tried out different colors, or do you just like the sort of challenge of green-white?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have tried a few other lists and stuff. So I definitely enjoy the challenge of green-white. I love a clean mana base, and I like keeping it straightforward and simple if I can. So the two-color mana base is definitely my favorite to run, and there's something just that feels really nice about just seeing all of my cards just being like green and white. Just feels really, really nice. I guess the Mindbreak Trap kind of throws that off, but it's definitely something I enjoy. And then I've tried a few other lists. I've tried a similar green-white without Stoneforge, which I posted in the Discord a few weeks ago, and I didn't get to test as much as I wanted to, but that was a fun list. And then I've played a couple lists where I just splash for Grist with a Bayou. That's been pretty cool. And I've also tried Harry's list a few times, which is his 75 is really powerful, and Orcish Bowmasters, Fiend Artisan, and Renegade Rallier specifically as well have been all really sweet, fun cards to play with, and super powerful as well.
I've seen lists that do have like the one Bayou and the one Grist, but then I'm sure from there it's a bit of a gateway drug where it's like, oh, I need to try to... Once you splash one card, it's pretty hard not to splash the others.
No, for sure. I get that. Grist is really powerful, and then splashing. You definitely want to dip into like Orcish Bowmasters. The card's really good, as well as Thoughtseize is nice too. But I feel like once you start doing that, then your mana base becomes a true 3-color. And you get some awkward play patterns like, do I fetch for, do I go Bayou Noble here and play in the Wasteland, because if I top the Orcish Bowmasters, I have to be able to have the mana to play it, and then you have to start fetching accordingly. With like just the Grist Flash, I feel like you can get away with like kind of just, hoping not to draw it, which does happen from time to time. I've definitely had some awkward draws where I draw that Grist the turn I want to get it, but overall I think you can get away with like still playing a true, fetching a lot of basics or Savannahs, and not have to like expose your black source.
Yeah, I think you're on the same page as me as well when it comes to mana bases. I know that in the past, some Abzan lists have splashed for Leovold without actually playing a Trop and just relying on Green Suns and Noble. So I assume you would never play Grist without a Bayou.
Yeah, exactly. I think specifically Noble Hierarch not being able to tap for black, and then I'd rather not play 4 birds just because Exalted is just, I think, what makes the deck tick. So yeah, I'm with you.
Nice. The Stoneforge package you mentioned, I kind of feel like that is the splash in a way. Like you see with green-white, you might have the Stoneforge Mystic package, you might have something like Urza's Saga, where you kind of fill the gap of like that third color, and Stoneforge just seems really good in Mav. It's kind of been there since the beginning in some builds, so it's always nice to see it there. For someone who wants to play Maverick with Stoneforge, I think that like potentially green-white is just the best version, because then you don't have to worry about kind of like the green-white part, the splash part, and then the Stoneforge part, you can just make sure you have enough space for just the Stoneforge part and the green-white part without kind of like, making your Green Suns package weaker, or, cutting maybe additional removal that you might have, like Grist or something. So yeah, green-white with Stoneforge seems like the perfect fit for Stoneforge in Maverick.
Yeah, for sure. I did try doing a little Stoneforge package with like Fiend Artisan or even like the Orchestral Masters versions, and it's just a little bit too many slots where I think they play similar roles on curve. That 2-drop slot, and being a proactive play. So yeah, and I love Stoneforge. I don't think there's any secret if you know me. Like I main Stoneblade, and so but like Maverick is my passion project. I honestly probably play more leagues and matches with Maverick, even though I wouldn't consider it my main deck. But Stoneforge is always been one of my favorite cards, and I love jamming Stoneforge. And every time I like, people talk about like Stoneforge being bad in the meta, or being like, it's just a Squire, it's not really good. And then I'll like, okay, I'll cut Stoneforge and try something else. I I end up going like, having a couple bad results and then playing a league with Stoneforge, and it just exceeds expectations every time. So it's definitely a favorite of mine, but also like definitely puts up the best results for me whenever I try it.
Nice. One question I know the Discord had was Cauldra, which I think a lot of people would, when you think of Stoneforge these days in Legacy, you think of Cauldra. And my quick take is that because you only have space for so many Stoneforges, the Batterskulls are realistically castable. The Cauldras, not so much. And so you've gone with Batterskull over Cauldra just because you have a higher chance of it getting into play if the Stoneforge isn't around.
Yeah, for sure. And so I messed around with Cauldra too, and I think that's one of the questions I get the most is like, why aren't you playing Cauldra? Especially like you said, in this day and age. I mean, Cauldra is a powerhouse. I play a lot of Cauldra and Stoneblade, and I like mess with stuff like Breakfast and even a little D&T. So I definitely see the upside of Cauldra, but I think Cauldra. So I have a few reasons why I don't like Cauldra, and at the same time, I think it's super valid if you wanted to play a Cauldra over. Um, I don't know if I'd play it over Sword of Fire and Ice, but I would. I don't like playing Cauldron with less than 3 Stoneforges, just because we don't have a way. Like you said, we don't have a really good way to cast it. If you've been playing Maverick for a while, like I know you have, like Maverick's actually has a really bad mana base, and I feel like that's like the best kept secret of the deck is like we have a really dependable mana base, and get even, I mean, like questing base isn't a deck, but like like Titania was like a crowd favorite for Maverick for a long time, and like Green Sun for 6 is so hard to pull off in this deck, and like let alone trying to cast a 7-drop. Feels like sometimes you do it, you have to do it off Cradle basically, but it's really hard to do. And I found with Batterskull I can definitely hard cast it, especially with Scryb Ranger. Like it happens quite often where it's like I get a turn 1 Dork, turn 2 Stoneforge. They remove my Stoneforge. Turn 3 I can set up for as early as a turn 3 Batterskull with Scryb Ranger, or 2 Dorks, or a turn 4 Batterskull, and then they're kind of stuck with what they have to do with that. And I think that this is like Cauldron versus Batterskull. I think so. I think Stoneforge is really there for fair blue, where it really shines, and then of course Jitte matches as well, like DNT. But Batterskull is just so much better versus the tempo decks than Cauldra, especially now that like the tempo decks, like I think the most popular deck right now is like Blue Black Scam, right? And Blue Black Scam has so many answers to Cauldra between like they play a 2 main board, she'll just eat it. Plus they're playing like a couple of Raising Borrowers. It's like really easy for them to kill Cauldra, and then like at that point it's so hard to equip and reuse it versus Batterskull. I feel like I can throw it on a Scryb Ranger, I can throw it on a bird, I can throw it on a lot of different things and keep it going, as well as like being able to stabilize against like Stompy and things like that, where Cauldra can't really stabilize as well versus like Goblin Rabble Master, or like stuff out of Moon Stompy. So that's I would say a big reason of that. And then two, I think that it makes sideboarding a little bit awkward because like Cauldra is really good against combo, probably the best equipment versus combo.
Yeah.
But like you can't, I like the sideboard or like at least trim on my Stoneforge package when I go against combo because I think the other options are better, right? Like my whole sideboard is like mostly anti-combo cards, and if I'm keeping Cauldra in for pressure, then I don't want to be trimming my Stoneforges. So it's like awkward dichotomy. And then if I'm gonna keep my Stoneforge package in its combo, then like what am I cutting instead? And it's kind of hard to find slots. So I think it's just a lot easier, in my opinion, to be able to just like trim Cauldra completely in those matchups. And then there's just so many answers to it now that it's a lot easier to not have to rely on that and actually making Stoneforge into like a true 2-for-1 versus just like a Cauldra machine.
Great answer. Very in depth. I love that. It's it's tough because like I think a lot of people are used to seeing it out of Death and Taxes where they have like the 4 mums, the 4 Stoneforges, like the 4 vials as well to see if a mum or Stoneforge can come in at end step to not get hit and come on, untapped essentially. But in this, it's a little bit tougher. And Batterskull gaining 4 right now is so good. Like incidental life gain is so underrated, and I think it's a big reason why
Dude, it's so good.
like Shadow Spear is just so annoying sometimes as a creature deck to play against. I've played against lands a few times or 8cast where their Shadow Spear has just like allowed them to not only like stall my ability to attack, but also allowed them to start attacking. And it's like, okay, now that's when you kind of feel the game switch. You're like, oh, okay, this is probably it.
Dude, totally, yeah, and like I have the same thing. Like I said, I play a lot of Cauldra and Stoneblade, and like at least I could reset that with Teferi, right? Or like I'm playing, whatever it is, like 9 basic, so it's like I'll eventually get the hard, start equipping it, but like yeah, it's just a different story with not being able to reset it and Maverick consistently, and the life gain is just Shadow Sphere is a house, and like being able to do the same thing. Like I think my most equipped target with Batterskull is honestly Scryb Ranger, and just making like a mini Bane Slayer is just really, really good against a lot of the format right now, and especially like Ancient Tomb decks, Stompy decks are just so popular online. I think Batterskull is. I don't like Batterskull if Stompy wasn't so prevalent, but I think with all the fire threats and initiative and mono red, mono black, like Batterskull really helps us stabilize so we can start getting our night engines online and other parts of the deck.
Yeah, I also like Batterskull just in mono red, especially because sometimes they do just have like the Turn 1 Blood Moon effect, but then don't have much else. You don't have mana, but you have lands to get to 5 mana, and then you can just hard cast Batterskull, which obviously isn't the greatest, but it's really nice to just know you have something to do.
Yeah.
Have you?
Sure. I think Batterskull is the best versus mono red Stompy. Like it hands down changes the matchup completely.
Yeah, because I think some people could say, oh, why don't you play Shadow Spear instead of Batterskull? It's very similar. But I think Batterskull just being like a kind of set and forget threat where you can put it in play and just have it there with Vigilance. And then sure, if they answer it, then you might even think of equipping it or like replaying it with Stoneforge. But with Shadow Spear, it's a little bit more finicky. Like you have to move it around. You have to make sure that you're like maybe X1 or, boltable threat that you're equipping to can't be bolted in response. Whereas Batterskull is just so nice that there's not many things that can deal with it, and it's kind of just going to do its role exactly as you want while you like build out your other kind of area of the game, whether that's putting out Green Suns or trying to like find another threat. It just does what it does really well.
Yeah, totally. And I think Stoneforge puts a lot of pressure when you have a equipment like Batterskull or Cauldra to get that like tells your opponent like, hey, you have to answer my Stoneforge right now, or else next turn you're dealing with the germ, and then it's guaranteed 2-for-1. Like I think my Stoneforges you like get forced a lot, and having a 2 mana white Hymn to Torok against like the fair blue decks is like really, really helps make the deck tick.
Yes. Yeah. Maverick Godfather Thomas Herzog played a version of Green-White at the end of, I'm going to say 2022, with a mana base of 3 forests, 2 plains. So 5 basics, which I've never seen. but he got a 5/0, which is very cool. Here we can see we have 2 forest and 1 plains. When I think of Mav, I think of like the 2 forest, 2 plains as being like an advantage. But I would assume Once Upon a Time also kind of comes into the math. And potentially even playing with the deck, you kind of feel like you just don't need the second white with no like double white pip cards.
Yeah, exactly that. Like we don't have any double white cards. Even if sometimes I've run Palace Jailer in the past. Like I love Palace Jailer, and I think that's one of the best parts of like carrying Achilles list is like being able to get an uncounterable Palace Jailer. But even if I was running Palace Jailer, like Wandering Emperor, Solitude, all those double white cards, I think I'd still stick with 1 plains. And I think that going back to like the mana base for Maverick, I think having turn 1 green source is just so important, and trying to minimize mulligans, which I think that's an underrated part of green white, is like you don't have to worry about having an open hand that has access to all 3 colors. Like you can just, you have a Savannah, you're good, and you can keep more 7s and 6s because of that. And I find that like with any fair deck in the format, like Legacy is so powerful that like mulliganing even once, let alone twice, is like almost a death sentence. Like your win percentage drops so much every time you have to mulligan, and like not having to mulligan as much because of clean mana base and minimizing non-green sources is, I think, really really helpful with this list.
Yeah. Yeah, the mana base is probably the biggest pull for me towards green white, because I love to start from like the bottom and then work upwards, and obviously the mana base is kind of the bottom in this case. And it's very easy to play around. Like I would say, like this is pretty stock. Like I would say maybe the Misty is where you have some movement. Like you could look at like a Marsh Flats if you really wanted another fetch for a plains, but I kind of feel like it's more important these days to have a fetch for Arbor than a white source, especially for something like
especially with Stoneforge, right?
Yes, yeah, especially in a Stoneforge build. But even little things like Teferi, tick down, bounce your 1 threat. You can't kill it if you have a Marsh Flats in play, but you can potentially if you get a Dryad Arbor end step, which is nice. I always like Dryad Arbor to be like the silent assassin of the deck. Some players just don't respect it, and they're like, oh, actually you can kill it. Like even killing like a Khan the Great Creator on like 1 loyalty. It's like, really? Like a Dryad took you out? You're like this massive being, and it's like this little forest was like, hey, whack. But yeah, the other kind of thing here that we see, especially with the Stoneforge build, is Gaddock Teeg as kind of the green hate bear over Collector Oof, which makes a lot of sense. Are there any matchups where you kind of miss the main deck Collector Oof? And I guess at the same time, are there matchups where you're really happy to see the Teeg in sort of game 1?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good question. I think like, so I think this is the biggest downside of playing the Stoneforge package is like, I used to play Oof over Teeg. I think that's the stock, right? Like playing Oof over Teeg, and Teeg is sideboard. And I think Oof is still more flexible and more impactful than Teeg. Even with like the Bean Miracle decks coming up and stuff. But yeah, I think that's the downside. I've tried playing Oof a lot alongside the Stoneforge package, and it's like it happens a lot where you play your random to you like game 1 against Delver, and you like play your random Oof on like turn 4 that you draw, and then like 2 turns later you draw your Sword of Fire and Ice or your Jitte, and like that would have stabilized you, but you can't even use it now.
Yes.
And you're like trying to get your opponent to remove your Oof, and you can't, and it's awkward. Versus like Teeg, at least you can Karakas it back, or like most of the blue players still don't want Teeg to stick around, so they'll point removal at it, and then you can unlock your Zenith or something. But I like Teeg against. I think the biggest one would be the Yorion Miracles builds are pretty. I feel like they're getting a lot more popular right now, and I think having access to the Mom plus Teeg in game 1 can steal some game 1s, which I think is really important in the matchup. That's a really difficult matchup. And then otherwise, I think it's pretty overlap. I think you're trading basically 8 cast versus Miracles with with the Teeg versus Oof, and I think all the other matchups are pretty similar. Like Storm, they're similar. I think the like Rip Helm, not Rip Helm, the Mono Black Helm decks. It's like kind of similar too. They're pretty close, and there's a couple other like, I guess Oof is nice against Painter, but I think that Oof is a little bit of a trap card versus Painter, because like sometimes you like go for this Oof, turn 2 Oof, and I have a mom, and like we're good, and then they'll just completely outvalue you with like Fable or Fury and stuff. And I think that Oof isn't that good against Painter right now, just because I think their value plan is better than ours. And
Yeah.
so like Oof isn't lights out either. So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to run Oof instead, I think still, but Teeg, I think, fills that role of having some sort of bullet that I can get versus like a fast combo deck just to shut them down, and if I have the time for it, and move on to game 2.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about Teak, about Oof against Painter, because I've definitely lost a ton of games to just like not wanting to block the 2/2 token, even with a mum, because you're like, if I block and give pro and then just have an instant speed way to kill it, then that's kind of just game anyway. And even though that we're taking 2, we're turning off the treasures to the some upside. But yeah, I listened to Bolt the Bird the other day with Disgruntled Elk, Travis, who's the modern Hammer player, and he spoke about Sanctify and Vec being a pro-black, pro-red card. Not as great as he thinks against Scam, or not as great as people think, and not like a card you want to mulligan to, because although it does do something, typically Scam's deck just goes wide and can kind of get through it. So although you might block, say, 1 Fury or 1 Grief, you're probably taking damage from another source. And it's kind of similar where you obviously don't want to mulligan heavily towards Collector Oof against Painter, but I can definitely see when you think of Painter why players might do that or just put a lot of emphasis on it. But it can really blow up in your face, which sucks, because you read the card and then you read Painter's list and you're like, surely this is like not a like I win button, but it's very close. And then it's never that case, unfortunately.
Totally, yeah. I think there's a misconception that that Painter is a combo deck still, and it really has changed a lot to like being a mid-range deck, a mid-range value deck with a combo, backdoor that they have access to, against like fast combo, Doomsday or Reanimate or whatever, or even like Control. And like Painter is so grindy now. Like I think I lose Oof or no Oof. Like I lose way more games to Painter versus their grindy stuff than their combo. Like we have so many answers for combo, even like untapping after they combo us and like playing a flash endurance in, but before I draw stuff. Like I feel like the Painter games I lose are either like multiple sagas and I don't have a Wasteland ready, or it's like, they got welder loops and all this kind of value stuff with like the dragon, the Unearthed Dragon. Forget that card's name, but they just have so many better, and of course Fury. Fury's like still our worst nightmare, I think, in any Maverick build. But yeah, I think that deck is not really a combo deck anymore, and like Oof is good. It's still good, obviously, but it's not a lights out card. I think like I'd almost get a Liberator first if I was Zenithing for something. A lot of times, if they don't have like combo ready to go.
Yes. Yeah, the value of Liberator is just so strong. Kind of forces them to do something as well. And just like once you make that first trigger of attacking with a 3/3 and taking out something like a Saga, it just feels so good.
Oh, it's a feeling I chase.
One other card not here is Questing Beast, which I assume is because you have Batterskull and the Stoneforge slot, that you kind of have your beatdown bear in that way in your Stoneforge package. Without Stoneforge, would you still play Questing Beast in this sort of list? Are you a fan of Questing Beast in Green-White?
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't. I should have linked it to you before, but I have another Green-White list that like I said, I haven't tested enough, but I think it makes sense in theory for people that doesn't run the. Oh, actually, I take that back. I'm looking at it right now. I actually don't even have a Questing Beast in that deck. I like Questing Beast. I think Questing Beast is great. It's just a space issue. Like I think Questing Beast is my 61st card a lot of
That's
times,
fair.
and I think Legacy is so Questing Beast is really useful and really nice, and there's definitely those corner cases like we all remember where like you you deal with that Minskimbu or Jace the Mind Sculptor out of Miracles, or like you kill that Karn through, or you kill that Lance player through a Maze of Ith. But like I think in general, if I look around like at my spreadsheet of matches, like it comes out a lot of matches, and it's ooh, it sounds a little heresy to say because I love questing beats, but sometimes it's just like a 4/4 vanilla beater for for 4 mana, and it can be like, you know, it can be limited. So I don't know. I love questing. I don't want to come up the wrong way. Like I love questing beats, and I would definitely play that at the space. But I think, I think Batterskull would be that slot, or even like Tireless Tracker, which is like a little bit of an odd one. I think that I think you posted a list that kind of got me thinking about Tracker again, and it's been great for me lately. But I think those cards are a little bit lower to the ground, and Batterskull specifically deals with a lot of matchups that I think are normally bad for Maverick that questing beast can't turn around to, like Initiative or Stompy decks or Delver. Or like I wouldn't be as excited about questing beast as I was Batterskull.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Questing Beast should have the nickname of Corner Case Beast, because I wouldn't say he's great for one specific matchup. There's a lot of cases where it's like, oh, I can green summons for Beast, and it's just like that like in that moment it lines up really well. But there are definitely a number of games where your opponent just has to tap Karakas, and you're like, okay, well I'm gonna get in 4, but then this Beast is just answered. And it might even be a matchup where you don't even want to go after the Karakas with Wasteland. You want to go after something else, but you kind of feel like you have to go towards the Karakas because you have the questing beast. So that can be pretty tough. So I can see that.
I think it might be a player deficiency thing for me, but like I've had some games where like, I deal with their like there's some random like fair matchups like Absent Depths or like even like 8 casts where you're like, do I want to trade off my questing beast for this construct token, or like they're neither reliquary or something? Like, am I like, or do I want to try and like deal with their Karakas first and then play, or like, am I going to try and get my own Karakas to protect my questing beast before I like commit to it? And so I tend to be a little bit like conservative, I think, with maybe a little too conservative with my questing beast instead of just like make them have it, especially like where it's like DNT, for example. But yeah, I love questing beast. Honestly, I think if I had the space, it would definitely be my 61st card.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example for this deck in just how you've kind of molded it towards every card having a reason and like a role. And obviously, Questing Beast is great, but just doesn't fit because it doesn't have that specific role for, X matchup where I want to improve in some way. You did mention Tireless Tracker, and with draw does come Bowmaster. How have you found playing against Bowmaster with this sort of list?
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about questing beast, I think the other point against it in this kind of list is I'm only running 22 lands, which I think is a land shorter than most lists, and I usually am a 23 land person, but playing the extra dork and trying to keep it a little bit lighter, I'm actually trying to invite people to wasteland me with such a stable mana base, because I want to play a really low to the ground, low resource kind of tempo game with green-white. So I don't think questing beast fits as well into that my tempo oriented game plan and like the way I view Maverick. But Tireless Tracker, yeah, I've actually been really impressed. I think I've only gotten in like maybe like 4 leagues with it now. But it's funny. I actually go a lot back to some of your videos with Julian. I really align with like Julian's views on Maverick, and he's always kind of preached that like Tracker is like stock, which I think is a very hot take with Maverick, and I don't know anyone else who thinks that way. But I see where he's coming with that, and I think that there's a nice, without Fiend Artisan, without Grist here and Bowmaster, our plan B, like our grind plan here, is really having a combination of 2 to 3 between Tracker, Excavator, Knight. If you have all 3, I mean, you're just pummeling people that are on combo. But having 2 of those 3, you really start to draw through cards and like really get through your deck. As far as Bowmasters, I mean, Tracker comes out in a lot of Bowmaster decks. Like if you look at the meta, like Bowmasters is really Blueback Scam. It's Grixis Delver. I guess DNT is one where I still want to keep Tracker in, but most of the Bowmaster decks are more tempo oriented and lower to the ground, and I don't want Tracker. So I think it kind of works out in that way. But I think it's okay. I think Tracker's been a nice substitute for Grist in this list, so I don't have to worry about that one Bayou and protecting that Bayou at all costs in case I draw Grist. And then Tracker just lets us grind out those other decks. And even if they have a Bowmasters, like, you can still do some things where it's like you wait till the end of their turn to crack the clue, and you still have your mom to protect whatever they ping, or things like that, where like you can really negate the things that Bowmaster's trying to do to your card draw.
Yeah, that's a great point. Have you always been like a fourth Thalia person?
Yeah, I've kind of come around on fourth Thalia, and actually 4-Knight as well. This is my first time taking a break from 4-Knight a little bit. I think Tracker or Excavator might be a little bit better in the fourth Knight, but I know that's a very debatable one. Yeah, so I think the Thalia is more in tune with the way that I see Maverick as a deck. I think that Maverick, I like to see Maverick more as like a tempo deck. Like it's really like a Delver deck in the sense where like you are trying to wasteland people, you're trying to create mana advantage. Like if you look at like I think like for example like I got into Maverick originally as an EDH player, like, oh, I get my silver bullets and like I can, get a Crystalline Pride Mage, I can get a Gaddock Teeg, and I have the perfect answer at all times. But after playing like I said, I play a lot of blue white and like seeing the power of cantrips and like really being a control deck where you have the answers for things that like, being able to get a Teeg or Crystalline Pride Mage or whatever that bullet is not the same in this green white deck, and a lot of the format's so fast and stuff that I feel like the soft lock and like bullety part of Maverick isn't actually like a great reason to play Maverick. Like there's a lot of better silver bullet decks out there. Like if you look at like, Cradle Control or like 5C Zenith, like those are like, I guess Cradle Control doesn't have a ton of silver bullets, but like 5C Zenith like has a lot of silver bullets, and they can like protect it with Force of Will and like find their Zenith with Ponder and Brainstorm or things like that. And I think that Maverick, like if you stack it against the other mid-range decks, like isn't a great mid-range deck at its core. Like Knight of the Reliquary isn't what it was in 2011, like when the deck came out. Like it's not the same threat that it was. And so I think that like I view Maverick more as like a tempo deck where it's like I want to like what are the core, like to me the core of Maverick isn't Zenith, but it's Wasteland. And like being able to like use Wasteland in ways that like Cradle Control can't, right? Where it's like, I'm here not to like to find my bullets and then like try to protect them. Like I want to create mana disadvantage with Wasteland. Like Wasteland's like one of the most powerful cards in Legacy, right? And like we're one of the best Wasteland decks I think in the format. Like D&T's not really a Wasteland deck anymore. Delver's still a pretty good Wasteland deck, but they can't recur Wasteland like we can or find it as well as we can. Lands is obviously probably the best Wasteland deck, but like we have like if you look at how Maverick's constructed, it's like it's constructed to take advantage of people's mana. So like it might not be a lockout, but like having a combination of like Noble Hierarch plus a Wasteland on turn 2 means that you're 2 mana sources ahead of your opponent, and you can capitalize on that with like Thalia, making that like another mana advantage against your opponent, and then from there you can tempo them out with like another reliquary that they can't force a will because your Thalia taxes their development, or like it's almost like like I think Thalia is almost like a Richard import, like your Delver opponent, for example, like can never tap out, or else any of your threats resolve if you have Thalia out. Like your Knight, your Scryb Ranger, your Endurance will automatically resolve anytime they tap out with Thalia, and like not having a Thalia out versus Delver, and like they have to pay 2 mana for their cantrips plus try to hold up mana for Force of Will or Daze is a win in my book. And I think that's what like you can really put people in pinches and really like get under a lot of decks and tempo them out with Maverick. And so that kind of like indirectly answers your question, but I think Thalia just really supplements that tempo game plan really nicely, and kind of helps the deck pick a lot versus the non-creature decks or the combo decks too.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because I do think that like turn one Noble into, or turn one Accelerant into turn two Thalia and Wasteland is just so strong, and still like one of the unfair in quotes thing Maverick can do. So having like making sure you have, you know, like the most amount of Wastelands being 4, Thalia 4, and also just a good number of Mana Dorks means you're probably going to get a pretty high chance of getting that done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
dude, exactly. I think like with Maverick, like, you know, we're such a fair deck. Like everything in Legacy is built off doing something unfair. Like even, you know, Delver is playing like a ton of free spells, right? Like Lothar, like there's combo decks using Lion's Eye Diamond and Lotus Petal and Dark Ritual. Like, you know, the Ancient Tomb decks are insane because they have Ancient Tomb, like tapping for 2 mana out of like a 1 land source. They can mulligan really aggressively. And like I think you look at Maverick, like there's nothing unfair about it, you know, and it's hard to play an unfair deck without Force of Will and Brainstorm and stuff to catch up. But I think that's one of our best ways to get free wins. Like Thalia, turn two Thalia Wasteland after Noble Hierarch, like can just get people. And I think having a free win like that is just really, really valuable. And as well, I think Gaia's Cradle also is another really unfair card we get to play.
yes, Reduke's most powerful card in
Yeah,
Legacy.
100%.
Three Knights, which I've also played with. I really like that it gives you like an extra slot, and in a way, Ramunap is just a knight, but for the graveyard. So I kind of feel like the Ramunap fits in nicely as like the fourth knight.
Mm-hmm.
First off, how do you like the Three Knights? And second, Achilles and Harry have been trying out Renegade Rallier with pretty good results. One of the big advantages Achilles said about Rallier was that it gets back non-green creatures from the yard, like Thalia or Orcish Bowmaster, etc., which you can't, of course, find off Green Sun Zenith, but with Renegade Rallier, you somewhat can. In this build, you don't really have that flexibility. You can get back something like Thalia or Stoneforge, but yeah, I guess thoughts on the like 3 versus 4 knights, and then like potentially trying out Rallier in this sort of build.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I honestly hate that I can't fit the fourth knight in there. I think knight is really good as a fourth because you get just like the difference between a turn three or you know with a dork, right? Like maybe a turn two versus a turn three knight or a turn three versus a turn four knight is so huge. Like especially we talked about like how knight is not the premier threat it was. Like you know it's not like the Tarmogoyf type of card it was in 2011. I think that like Knight's the best way to use Knight right now is really just to use as a Wasteland machine, and so having that Wasteland machine online a turn earlier is like huge. And I think when you don't have to constantly be zenithing for it on turn three after like a dork, it really helps you get your Knights going fast and puts a lot of pressure on opponents to either like force a will it or like try and kill it like and devote too many resources to it because they don't have their resource online like established. Like they have to like pitch like versus ENT, like if you my knight is, you know, I'm on the play and I get a knight turn two, like now they have to pitch cast that solitude and go down a card instead of like play the Skyclave, which would be like perfectly on curve for them, right? So like being able to have 4 knights means you get a lot more turn two, turn three knights naturally. um but yeah, I just with Stoneforge, I don't think there's a ton of space here, and like you said, I think Excavator or Tracker having those extra bullets is kind of nice for the grind. But I think that I see it more from like a mana curve perspective. So like my mana curve already has, if you look at like has 8 3 drops right now, and I don't really count Batterskull as an additional, but I would count like Questing Beast as like another like 3+ drop. And I think trying to keep it a little bit lower to ground and diving more into the Wasteland plan lets me play, or like cost me by trying to play less 3 drops or the minimum amount of 3 drops as possible. Which like if you want a really good resource, I think someone who doesn't get enough credit for his work in Maverick is Lorcac from the Discord. That guy's awesome. Shout out to Lorcac, but he's written some like amazing articles on Reddit on like tempo theory and Maverick theory and like, you know, and I know he always plays a lot of like really low to the ground lists, and he's like a 4 of night guy and stuff like that. So I kind of borrow that from him of like trying to keep a minimum like really low 3 drops as possible. Like I think again like the 10+ 3 drops is when like Maverick becomes a really clunky like kind of like Jund mid range deck, and like at that point I wonder if like, you know, you just play like I don't know, like Cradle control or just Jund or something like that. But yeah, and then I think as far as like playing Renegade Relier, dude, I love Renegade Relier. Like I think that's one of my favorite parts about like Harry and Achilles list. That card is insane, and you get some like really powerful tempo plays with it, where you can just like completely turn a corner against a lot of decks. Like, of course, double Wasteland is awesome, and I don't know if Renegade Rallier fits as well in this deck. Just because, even like you can get back like a Stoneforge that got like forced or something, and Jitte is harder to get back against something like DNP, unfortunately, just because they have a lot of exile. Like Skyclave is usually how they deal with it. I guess you can, they have the Lauren or whatever, that's destroy. So like
Yeah.
you can get back Jitte that way. But I think that when I've used Renegade Rallier in the past, it was always like right on the edge, just because it's hard to trigger Revolt. But I think with Fiend Artisan, really lights the card up, like makes it really, really good, because you usually Fiend Artisan for it, and you're always getting that Revolt trigger. And
Yeah.
it's sweet in that deck.
That's a really good point, especially if you get back the creature you just sacked, which could even be beneficial, like an Orcish Bowmaster. If you sack a Bowmaster
Yeah.
to then go and get Rallier to get Bowmaster back to then ping something as well, that's just, that's so much value.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the best plays you could do it with the Rallier. It's like you either get back the Orc that you sacked, or you get back the Wasteland. And not to dive too much in the Black Splash, but I think that's like something that's really, really cool and unique about the Fiend Artisan list.
Yeah, the 3-drop slot is very tightly contested, and I know that there was a a Discord member who wanted to know about like Skyclave Apparition in green-white as a removal piece, but I think it's probably just hard where it's a 3-drop, you can't tutor for it, you can't flicker it and get like that extra advantage, but it does do some work. Like, it is disruption and it is pressure in somewhat, but I think it's probably just that awkward space of like you can't utilize it to its full potential, and you do have other things like Outland Liberator or Swords, which can deal with most threats you're up against, especially in game one.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I like Skyclave. Like, I think I've tried Skyclave in the past. I want to say, actually, going back to your Herzog deck list, I think that was a Skyclave heavy list. I think you ran like one or two of, and I think back then the Maverick community was higher on Skyclave. I think like what's his name, Matthew Osmandius was playing a little bit of Maverick, as well as like Jarvis, and they were using Skyclave because of Once Upon a Time and like having consistency right when it came out. So like Skyclave is a sweet card and familiar to me. I think like I just look at like what am I cutting for that, and then like you said, like mana curve, and I think the biggest steer away for me with Skyclave is like you look at the Legacy format right now, and like the top dog is, I think, clearly is like Blue Black Scam, and like Skyclave doesn't hit a ton of things. Like you want answers to Troll and to Murktide right now, and Skyclave missing on both of those against the tempo decks, I think is unfortunately a big hit to the card.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Troll just has such a big target on its head that like Path to Exile on the board is perfect for that matchup, because it does just hit everything, and you don't really care about basics. The funny thing with Path as well is that a lot of decks post board go for basics early on to play around Wasteland, so that when you get to the timed Path, they actually have none left. So the downside isn't actually there, which is pretty nice. But I
for sure,
I do agree that most removal, especially in this build, has to line up with Troll, and it pretty much does, which is nice.
Yeah, Troll is really, really good. Troll is scary. Like turn 2 Troll, like so. Going back to like skipping around a little bit to the Path, like I actually tried really hard not to play Path because it talks so much about tempo with Maverick and being a Wasteland deck, and Path is kind of the opposite. So I tried like playing a lot like Dismember. I tried playing. I mean, Grist was in that slot, of course. I thought about playing. Like I looked at like all the white removal. Like there was one from like one of the Eldraine sets, but like I think it's Fateful Absence, where it's like a 2-mana instant that destroys, is weird, like a white card destroy, and it gives them like clue token.
Yeah, I believe the artwork has a core in it.
And then I know there's. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The artwork has a core in it. It looks like Stoneforge Mystic.
I thought it was Sorin. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's like from one of those like vampire. I'm not really good at the lore, but one of those kind of sets.
Yes.
But I think Dismember, actually played around Dismember a little bit, because I know Lorcack was on that, and I was going off of his list, and I liked Dismember, like for hitting mana dorks, was really nice. And of course Magus of the Moon was a sweet plus with Dismember. But I think one of the downsides I found with Dismember, like Dismember, I think is was there to hit Troll, for example. Like it's a 6/5, so you can deal with a turn 2 Troll. But if you're playing a tempo deck and like you Dismember, like usually I feel like the games they beat me is like Troll with Force Will backup on turn 2, and like if you Dismember a Troll and they force it, you're just like the game is just over at that point. Like you just took a turn off of your life. Or like the other thing is like there's all these fair reanimate decks going around, like Gam, or like they're playing the reanimate main board, and like dismembering something just for them to bring it back is also feels really bad. And like
Yes.
I think exiling is really good and a good reason to play white. So and like
Yeah.
Knight of the Reliquary, I think I worry about Knight a little bit in the depth matchup, and being able to path that is really nice.
Yeah. Speaking of removal, one card that gets a lot of talk is Maze of Ith, which isn't specifically a land. It's probably more of a spell if you want to put it in your deck. With your mana base being so strong, would you ever consider Maze as like a land that's a spell, but putting it in the deck as a way to deal with some threats? Or are you like potentially me, where I kind of feel like a lot of the decks where Maze is good, Wasteland from their side is also very good, but potentially it's not always the case. Like there have definitely been games I've watched where Maze has just kept like a Murktide or a Troll at bay for like several turns, but I think I kind of just got hit pretty hard early on by Wasteland always taking out the Maze before I could do anything, and just like taking that small sample size and being turned off it. But I'll definitely love to be convinced that it potentially is, a strong answer to opposing threats.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually with you on that too, Dukes. Like I've had a few games where I was testing Maze, and like, they Murktide and Wasteland you, and then your Maze, is gone, or like they just double Murktide you. You only can Maze one of them.
Yes.
And so I've had some definitely awkward games with that. And then the other awkward, I think, other awkward thing about Maze is it makes sideboarding a little bit awkward against the tempo decks, where like I would say Maze is really there for the tempo decks, and maybe the Culture decks too, but I think Murktide was the biggest reason I wanted to play Maze. Depths were pretty good against already. Merit Lodge, we have like 1,000 answers too. So like when you try to bring in Maze or keep Maze in your main board versus the tempo decks, like you really want to keep like Excavator too, and you want to keep more Knights.
Yeah.
I was on like 4 Knights at the time. Like you want to keep all these things that like synergize with Maze or bringing back Maze, but like I trim down on those kind of more value higher end threats versus tempo in the sideboard. So it's like this awkward, like, do I keep Excavator now because I have the Maze to bring it back? Like, do I try to play my Knights in a way where I'm like always trying to get Mazes instead of Wastelands? And it can be a little bit awkward, and I think a little bit dissynergistic, which was, I think, yeah, along with what you said, just kind of put me off Maze for the time being.
Yeah, that's fair. Sadly, I have 4 minutes left. So
Oh man, okay.
what I was going to ask was I think a lot of players who want to play Maverick start off with green-white. It's just a really nice way to like get the deck and then realize like, do you want to stay with green-white, or like with your local meta game, do you want to play black? Do you want to play red? Do you want to try out another splash? Do you have any kind of thoughts on players coming into the deck as like kind of basic tips, or even how big is the third Savannah, or any sort of
Yeah, for sure.
any general tips for
Yeah, I'll try to go fast. Third Savannah, not super necessary. I think you could play another fetch land, or like even like a Temple Garden if you're on a budget. Like isn't too bad. And just be mindful of that when you're fetching. Maybe like do an end of turn back land or whatever. But don't think I would play basic planes. Actually, I think about it, I would play another Horizon Canopy over the
nice?
Savannah. Actually, that was a card. That was my 23rd land I cut with second Horizon Canopy. I think it's one of the values of playing a straight green-white mana base. You can play a little bit more of the cycle lands. Even with Bowmaster, I think it's still worth it. And then I think the draw. So I think it's a great budget. Like I would say I'm still a budget player as well. Like I don't have Bowmasters in paper online. It's hard to justify it for me in my budget, even though I have like Bayous in paper and stuff, or a Bayou. I think the draw is don't look at it as like, oh, this deck doesn't have Bowmasters, but like this is a deck that has Stoneforge Mystic and has a really straightforward game plan. Like it's not just about like having easy mana sequence, but having mana sequencing that allows you to be a tempo deck, that allows you to aggressively wasteland the tempo decks, allows you to operate off of 1 or 2 Savannahs or off basic lands and not worry about like, turn 3 you top deck that Bowmasters and you had gotten a Force before because of a Wasteland they showed you. You don't have to worry about this stuff. And I think Stoneforge is great and a criminally underrated card. I think Jitte specifically is just like really good against all the decks that Maverick struggles against, like DNT. Even the new Goblin deck is a little bit scary with like Lackey and the Ritual Sticker Goblin. Jitte helps a lot against that, and the Mirror, of course, or Cradle Control Elves. Jitte, I think, is just a house, and then Batterskull having that ability to stabilize against the Stompy decks is just very unique to Stoneforge. I don't think there's any other. I've tried Solitude in the past, and the card disadvantage against the Stompy decks is just absolutely brutal because all of their cards are like 2 to 3 cards worth of value. Like Kay's Chaos Adventure is like basically like 3 cards of value, right? Like it starts to draw cards for you when you end up with it, and of course the initiative trigger. It gets a basic land out of it. All these things. So it's like a really powerful mid-range threat. Ancient Tomb, like you can't. You have to try and play to your mid-range game against those decks instead of like trying to go on the same tempo of them. Like you want to be that control deck. But yeah, I think that's a benefit. And then a lot of people ask me about like Sword of Fire and Ice. That's usually the card people want to cut. And I see it as like a card that is really helpful to help. Each equipment has like a role to me. Like Batterskull stabilizes against aggro decks. Jitte helps against the small creature decks where I don't want to plow things and save the plow. Sword of Fire and Ice is like, hey, we have empty boards and we're both like on parity of resources. Like Sword of Fire and Ice makes everything into a threat. Like they have to use removal on. Like you have to now bolt my Noble Hierarch instead of the Excavator or Knight because it's equipped with a Fire and Ice, and I can just keep reloading and like actually draw cards and get real card advantage off that they have to do something about. So that's my my thing about Stoneforge.
I love that. Yeah, there's nothing better than your opponent having to worry about cards that you obviously don't really care about, and like making a non-threat a threat is kind of like where you can get those edges, which is sweet. But Clips, a big thank you for coming on. I'll have to set something else up because I know there's more value here, so we'll have to.
For sure, man. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff like the chokes and the 4 endurances, all these things. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. This was so much fun. Appreciate all the work you do. Shout out to you. Shout out to Strass and his content. And my buddy Carador helps me a lot build my deck. Shout out to him. I think he helps me get these lists going. But yeah, thanks, man. This was a lot of fun. Love talking about Maverick.
No, you're welcome. I love talking about it as well. And this, it'll be a really nice resource for those getting into green-white to have hopefully a little bit evergreen as well for the coming months. Legacy changes a fair bit, but I think we covered some pretty good like basics for the deck.
Yeah.
If people want to find you, you are pretty active in the Discord.
Yeah, I don't have a Twitter. I'm a little bit boomer in that way. Don't have a Twitter. I don't have a Twitch or anything, but Discord, I'm always around on Discord. Hit me up in the Maverick Discord. You can PM me as well if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help people play some Maverick, man. That's what it's about.
Nice. I love it. A huge thank you again. Enjoy your Sunday evening. And
Sunday evening, yeah.
I'll have to get you on for like a green-white co-stream. That'd be very cool.
Oh man, I would love that. That'd be a ton of fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Let me know your schedule.
Will do. Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching.